everyone. Today we'll be talking about the cascading style sheets. For web development. So here is what this presentation includes. What is the cascading style sheets and why do we need to use them? What is the structure and the syntax, that is the programming language syntax for including cascading style sheets into our web pages? The definitions, where we can define and include the cascading style sheets into our code, and then we will look at more specifics for the syntax. Finally, we will discuss the inheritance for cascading style sheets, and we will look at some examples. So what is the cascading style sheet? Well, it's a style sheet, which means that it allows us to define style. That is, we can define colors, fonts, include photos, pictures into our web page. It's a standard-based set of properties and attributes to define our style. So it is a standardized language that allows us to define specific styles onto the web page. To describe the presentation of a document which is written in either the hypertext markup language HTML or the extensible markup language XML. Both of those are markup languages. So what do we mean by a markup language? That comes from the old times of when we were using typewriters. And in those times of the typewriters, people were marking things up, such as this is a bold color, this is italics, this is underlined. So that allows for markings or tags that would define specific style on the web page. So what are the tags? This right here is a tag. That's the opening tag, and then we have a closing tag, which is the same tag with a / in front of it. And whatever is within the tags is defined in terms of style by these tags. So this specific one is just a paragraph. It says this is a separate paragraph, and when this ends, which it ends right here, another paragraph can start or another style can start. So it defines the style in a sense that let's say we want to make these text to be bold. That's a style, right? So we encode it into the B tags. or if we want to make it italics, we would include the I tags. So it allows us to make our text pretty, beautiful, to use certain colors or certain styles, or certain arrangement onto the screen. Let's say this paragraph goes to the top left, the other one to the bottom right, the picture is right in the middle of the screen, then the picture is specific size. Let's say want to have a picture that's 512 pixels by 512 pixels. We can specify the size of the picture and the location of the picture onto the screen. Do we want it in the middle, in the top left, in the bottom right, or where? All of that is styling. The colors, the italics, the pictures. So it'll define the style of how, using those tags, it allows us to define style of how things should appear. So that is, what font do we want to use? What colors do we want to use? What should be the size of these fonts? The margins of the page. So the cascading comes to the rules to determine how to apply a particular markup that contains other markups inside of it. So we can see here in this picture that there are markups that can be nested inside of other markups. The body comes first. Body didn't end yet. Inside of the body we have a divider and a paragraph. So the paragraph is inside of the divider and the divider inside of the body. And only when the paragraph ends, the divider will end and finally the body ends. So this is what we mean by cascading. Why do we need these cascading style sheets? So there is separate content from the form. In HTML we have something called a form. A form would allow us to, let's say we want to have an e-commerce website. We want to have customers. We want to have customers place order. On the form, we can have them fill out their name, address, credit card information, and then press the order button. So we can have something like that, we need a form. So the contents in the text, the content is the text and images marked up to define regions of specific types. Content is the text and images marked to define regions of specific types. And the form would define the style for this content. So here we can see font. First of all, what is the font and what is the size of the font? It's 14 pixels. Then the font definition ends. Font size 12 pixels, color red, use the Veranda font. Then we type something here that will be 12 pixels using Veranda font, and it will show up in red color. Font size 14 pixels, my second header, and so on. By using the cascading style sheets, we can have a separate content from the form. So the cascading style sheet allows us to define this class here. Called header. Then another class is defined called info, and we can have several headers, first header, second header, by using this class. So that allows us to define a style of this header, and the same for the info. So specific markup properties, like the class, we will look at those later on. But for going back to the form, inside of the form, we can call our header class and say in the header, the font size will be 14 pixels, and whatever is in the information, we'll use the Veranda font and the blue color of size 12. So that's the first class that was defined, and this is the second one. So what do we get from something like that to where the content would be separate from the form? It allows us to specify the style once, and we're going to define the class. And then every instance of this class that we define will be using that same style. So only one time we have to tell what we want the style to be, and then we can create multiple instances of this class where each one of them would be using our desired style. So that is specify the font once for all the text on the HTML page, which we have identified to be the header of the page. The style sheet can be in a separate file. And if we do something like that, we can pretty much include this style file, much like a header that we would include in programming languages, onto our website. And then all of our pages on our website could call this style sheet file and uses the same style. So we can have multiple pages from our website and include the style file in them, and it will allow us to have all of our pages into the same style. If we would like to change the style, it is much easier to go ahead and change this include file that defines our style, and we can easily change the style for the entire website. So the style sheet allows us to define style that can be used like this through the entire website. So let's see how the syntax looks like for these style sheet definitions. So there are three main components. The first one is a selector. The selector would identify what sections from the HTML page would be affected by the styling sheet. So for example, here the selector says H1, so there is a header. So it will be affecting the headers in this case. The second component is the property. What attribute of that particular HTML section will be affected? So for example, here the attribute is the color. So this style sheet is going to affect the headers and specifically the colors of the headers. And the last component is the value. So we're saying it affects the header and the color. Well, what color do we want it to be? So you see here it's the red color, so we specify that as the value. So this would be the declaration, the syntax for declaring the cascading style sheet. Let's look at some more code examples here. Inline the style attribute. So in this paragraph we have a style attribute. The definition is about the font color and it is red. And then we have another definition about the font size. So it says 10 pixels. And there it comes what will be appearing in red color in 10 pixels. So the actual content. Finally, the tag is closed for this particular paragraph. So the style sheet affects this paragraph only. So note the selector for the inline is the tag which contains the style attribute. So that was an inline style attribute. Then we have an internal style marked up tag. So here is the HTML file. It starts here. That is the head of the HTML file, and there the style starts. So we can use the style tag to define a style sheet within the beginning of the HTML file, like this, and we can say paragraph is here, background color red, font family serif, and color white. So be red background with white fonts. This is to the head of the HTML file. The rest of the contents here is not affected by the style sheet. And then we can have an external style sheet, as we mentioned here, that gives us earlier, that gives us the opportunity to easily change the entire site. If we have a style sheet in a separate file, we can call it by including it, much like the headers included in standard programming languages, included into all of our pages onto our website to make the entire website into the same style. So if it is external file, then we would use the href and then give the name of the style sheet file .css file that we would like to include, which is an external file. So we would say link style sheet. The type is text/CSS, and then give the file name for that style sheet, mystylesheet.css. There are many kinds of selectors, and there are many ways to reference them. For example, type, class, ID, all of those are selectors. So the HTML type tag can be selected like this. Paragraph starts here, font size is 10 pixels, font color white. The class attribute can precede the class with a period. So this right here is attribute of a So the attribute would precede the class with a period, and then this over here is the class. Class is my info, and then comes the content that would be styled by using the my info class. It will be affecting this particular paragraph only, or this particular divider. And the last thing we will be discussing about these cascading style sheets is the inheritance. As we have mentioned earlier, we can have nested elements, and these nested elements would be inheriting the property of their parent. So whatever cascading style sheet was there in the previous nesting would be applied to the ones underneath as well. So for example, here we have body. Within the body we have divider. Within the divider we have a paragraph. Because the body had a style sheet applied to it, which means it was a font family veranda using a 14 pixel size. Whatever comes within the body, including the divider and the paragraph, are going to be also using the veranda style with 14 pixels. So that tag will affect all of the content type, all of the content in the HTML, because it is within the body tag. Now we can override things once we go further down into the code for this HTML page. We can overwrite the inherited settings if we want. So then we would specify style in some of the more local elements. Let's say we come in here. There is some small text that we would like to have it look differently than the 14 pixels. We want this small text to be 8 pixels. Then we will just say dot little text, and then give it the overwrite its property. So instead of 14 it'll be 8 pixels. The little text is an actual class that is defined over here. And so by using the dot operator, as we mentioned earlier, we can refer to a specific property of that class. Okay, so that is all that we have for the cascading style sheets for today.